Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have tonight we have a late night insight. Actually, it's an artisanal late night insight because we're going to have an unboxing of probably one of the most anticipated artisanal releases of 2025 for me, because I absolutely loved version 1.0, which I reviewed on the channel, and we're going to do a early impression of a different artisanal house. So artisanal late night insight on channel Ram tonight. So the unboxing first. So this is, and I actually I already took it out of the box, we don't have to mess with it, but there's a brand new fragrance from the house of Sherwood, and it's called Paradise 2.0. There already was an original Paradise, which I absolutely loved. It was probably, if you came to me and said, Ramsey, you could have any Sherwood fragrance that you don't already have a full bottle of, it would be Paradise, because Paradise was a very oud heavy fragrance that I thought was one of the most amazing value for money ouds you could buy back then. Now, it came out in 2022, so it's already 3 years old, and I reviewed it on the channel, I want to say maybe a year or so ago, give or take. I don't remember exactly, but maybe in the last year or so, let's say I reviewed it. YouTube says 10 months ago. So within the last year, I reviewed it, and it sold out after I did that review, and I wish I would have grabbed a bottle. I think it was available when I actually did the review, and so I absolutely adored it. It's an oud-heavy fragrance, and so he decided to do a 2.0 version because of how highly thought of it was in the community, especially value for money. You got a lot for your money in the original Paradise. Now, this is sort of going down a very similar trend from what I hear. There are 4 different types of oud in Paradise 2.0, and they are distilled premium agar wood that is non-soaked, and he said that he ended up yielding 100 grams of oil from 60 kilograms of raw material. But there's 4 different type of oud oils in here. So here's the new Paradise 2.0, and you can bet your bottom dollar that I will be wearing this tomorrow as my scent of the day. I actually have a couple precious drops in a sample form of the original Paradise, so I'm going to compare it to it over the next day or two and try to do a comparison video, or at least do a video on this and maybe talk a little bit about the original in there as well. But one thing that he did, which I'm very, very proud of him, is you see, this is the largest batch he's ever run. So usually his batches were 40, 50, 60 bottles, and I kept telling him it's not enough for the exposure that you're getting. They're selling out instantly. So now he has done 120 bottles. Unfortunately, he does not have a website, and that probably won't happen for another year or two from talking to him now, from what it sounds like. So you will have to reach out to him on Instagram, Sherwood Parfums, or if you don't have an Instagram and you just want to send him an email, send me a message and I'll shoot you his direct email so you can just contact him directly. That's the only way to buy these, direct contact with him, and he will send it to you. So this is the new Paradise 2.0. Cannot wait to get to know this, as I absolutely adored the original Paradise. So, very quick unboxing. More info to come on this very, very soon. I don't have a note listing or anything, so I'll have to get a note listing from him or go on Instagram and try and find it or something. But I believe there are still bottles left. So I'm not sure exactly how many, but a couple days ago, he told me that about half had already sold out. So he did 120, half are already gone. So that means there's still something like the usual amount when he starts a fragrance, like 60 bottles or so left over. So if you're interested, go ahead and hit up Prakhar at Sherwood Parfums on Instagram. Okay, so now we're going to make a right turn and go to the house of Prin, which one of my favorite houses to discuss on the channel because they're such a strange, unique house. You never know what you're going to get with Prin. And to be fair, I've done a lot of work on Prin. They may be one of the houses that I've done the most work on that I own 0 bottles from, okay? I have one from his Strangers line, but that's a completely different target audience. In fact, if I could sell a fragrance or 2 from my collection, which I don't do, but if I could, I would probably sell that Strangers cigar rum. It's not really something that I am into at this point in my fragrance journey, if you will. But so Prin, what's interesting is I've done a ton of work on the channel. You can check it out. And he kind of has this DNA, okay? So it opens up Prin. Oh, I should tell you, I guess the fragrance we're going to be discussing today. It's called Rahasani or Rahassanai. And so this fragrance came out in 2022. And it is $320 for 30 mil, which I guess in 2022 speak was like mind-blowingly expensive. Now that we're in 2025, it strangely almost seems reasonable. You know, it's insane how fragrance prices have just skyrocketed over the last 3 years. But I've had this sample in my collection thanks to, I'm going to give a shout out to another brother in the community here, fragnanimous.com. If you're into these artisanal fragrances, Lee from Fragnanimous is absolutely awesome. I trust him wholly. He is an amazing guy. I've interacted with him a lot. And he, I don't know if he ships internationally is the only thing, but if you're in the United States, definitely hit up Lee from Fragnanimous if you're into these sort of artisanal houses. Okay, so I've had this in my collection from the time it came out in 2022, thanks to Lee at Fragnanimous. So today's the day we're finally going to get a chance to talk about it, and you can see there is not very much left in my sample there. So I've tried this on periodically over the years, and I'll tell you the very first thing, yes, this fragrance does open up with Prin's DNA and fingerprints all over it. However, this fragrance has, you know, even though it has that unbalanced sort of spice combination that Prin tends to use in so many of his fragrances that just seem misbalanced to my nose, okay? Seems like an insane over-the-top thing he does over and over and over again. I've come to the conclusion I think he does it for sort of shock value, if you will. But this stranger comes out of left field here, and you get this very strong hit very, very early on in the fragrance. 10, 20 seconds, okay? You get this sort of hit of orris butter, okay? And the orris butter here is something that you would expect to smell in maybe like a Francesca Bianchi fragrance or something. It's like, what in the world is this doing in a Prin Parfum fragrance? It has this, the fragrance goes from basically having this sort of exceedingly dry spice combination that you kind of have come to expect from Prin. Weird stuff though, you know? And then all of a sudden, this very magical orris butter starts to come in, and it becomes very, very soothing and buttery and smooth. You know, it tends to smooth everything out, and the florals start to begin to do their work. And it's very, very magic as far as the way that the orris butter tends to just kind of come in and just smooth everything out, so you don't get that unbelievably off-putting Prin sort of spice combination, if you will. Very, very magical type opening. And I was not expecting that, because yes, you get the weirdness, the Prin weirdness, if you will. But all of a sudden, this very soothing floral orris butter tends to come in and work its magic, and it's done with this 50-year-old Thai oud, okay? So a very ancient oud that's used here, and he used real skunk oil in Rahasani. Surprisingly, real skunk oil tincture is used. So this is years before Russian Adam used it in Forbidden Flower. So you have to give credit to Prin on that front at least. Although, to be fair, there is a fragrance that I think was doing something similar, Suga Parfums Fiona, which I reviewed on the channel, and I actually prefer Fiona to this, but they both play in a very similar sandbox, very big floral fragrances, both use skunk tincture and other strange animalics. But the reality and strange part of the fragrance is that I almost seem to get more of the skunk tincture or skunk oil tincture than the actual oud, which is usually the other way around. Usually oud is a more dominant note, and the skunk oil tincture, you just use the tiniest amount. It's like if you can smell the skunk oil, you probably use too much kind of thing. It's just meant to be a little bit of an animalic contrast. The oud note here stays in the background, okay? So, strangely, the oud note stays in the background and tends to play peekaboo. To be fair, though, the name of the fragrance is, when you translate Rahasani from Thai to English, it literally translates to like hidden messages or hidden code or implied messages or something along those lines, you know? So the fact that much of the fragrance seems to kind of come to you in this like secret message way where the oud stays in the background and plays peekaboo and comes and goes makes perfect sense from the from the blurb of the fragrance. So the spice combination of the opening, that you usually get that huge Prin overdose, comes off the top, and it just seems to almost like he tried to put some spice in, he used too much and just dumped the whole damn thing in and then said screw it and just continued on. I've used that analogy a lot when discussing a Prin fragrance. On the other hand, there is that calling to you from the background, you know? So the fragrance spice combination almost feels like, imagine you took like a clear water cup, you know, like a glass water cup, and you just put some of the spices in there that are in this fragrance, and you all of a sudden start swirling them around, right? Where you can see the dry spices kind of going about in this rotating like tornado-like fashion around and around in the cup, you know, and you're kind of moving it around, and then you smell it. And the fragrance gives off this extremely dry, almost to the point of like feeling like dry ice to me. There's this like exceedingly dry aspect, and it starts to turn very camphoraceous. Okay, so the spices kind of swirl in the cup, and all of a sudden, the simple act of swirling in the cup seems to soften them up. That's an image of how the fragrance starts to come to you, and that softening up, obviously, it's not just from the magical act of spinning the spices around in the cup. It's from this orris butter and floral combination that tend to kind of come in. So it has everything to do with that amazing orris butter, which again, you would not expect in a Prin fragrance like this. You would expect it in something like a Francesca Bianchi. And it just has this sort of almost like a live feeling. You know what I mean? Like the orris butter adds this feeling of like this powdery floral combination that just seems to make everything more palatable. The animalics, especially the animalics, they don't seem harsh in this at all. For a fragrance that touts the real animalics that are used, everything is sort of toned down. The volume is turned down here. So there is castoreum, along with that 50-year-old Thai oud, along with the skunk oil tincture, along with costus, which can have this sort of almost like wet fur or wet hair. I've always thought of costus as smelling like, imagine if you've ever had like animals, you had a dog or something like that, and they had a dog bed that they slept in. If you didn't wash that bed they slept in, the oils and everything from their fur got on there, and it really started to leave this old, musty remnant, you know, old animal hair remnant type smell, right? This sort of unwashed hair type feeling. And that's what costus tends to smell like. So there's costus in here along with these other animalics that are highlighted, but everything seems toned down. Everything seems calm. It's almost as if the simple act of swirling these spices and saying a magic spell or something made them lose like 90% of their potency. So there's myrrh, there's costus, and there's a few other notes that angelica, which I love, and there's spruce and oak moss, which add this green aspect to this almost floral, forest floor-like feeling, right? And there's this very earthy, almost slightly fungal, mushroomy, or maybe you could even use the black truffle that Tom Ford uses over and over again in his releases. You know, there's this truffle earthiness that tends to come through as the fragrance continues to dry. And remember, this fragrance, Rahasani, is all about the peekaboo. It's all about sort of these notes weaving in and out, you know? You're not supposed to just smell the oud, or you're not supposed to just smell the, you know, skunk oil or something like that. And so you get little hints here and there of the Thai oud. You get little hints here and there of the skunk oil, of the unwashed hair costus feeling. But then it goes in the background, it recedes. And you will get traditional hints of the Thai oud, more of the slightly fruitier, more likable aspects to the average person. But maybe it's because it's a 50-year-old Thai oud. I have no idea. But the oud remains very subservient to some of these other notes. Since this idea of sort of hide and seek is what the fragrance is all about, the oud fits perfectly into such a project. If that's literally what Prin was going for, this oud is perfect for it, because I don't know if it's lost some of its potency over the 50-year span, but it definitely feels very, very mellow. You know, it's a very, very mellow feeling. It's like having a bowl of cereal or something, and the milk just being sort of the leftover of what the cereal made the milk taste like. You know, there's this remnants, this leftover like feeling. The other thing that's extremely important to mention is that this is probably the most floral heavy Prin composition I've ever reviewed on the channel. Okay. And I've done a ton of work on Prin. Like I said, if you go look up my playlists, you'll see I have them sort of listed by some of the list videos that I did. So I've got This Is Not a Top 10 this year in perfume, all this stuff, but I also have the houses. So if you want to go see all my Dior videos, all my Creed videos, you can. Prin is like Prin, and then Parfums Persona, and then Prin spelled differently with a Y. There was some copyright issue or something. I don't know. And then Strangers, he has all these different brand names, you know? But of all the ones that I've reviewed, and I've done a ton of work on the house, this is probably one of the most floral heavy compositions I think I've ever reviewed on the channel. The florals here make up a huge component of the perfume. And actually, when you combine them with that silky smooth, buttery orris butter, which to me is very evident very, very early on, the florals and the orris butter create this combination, you know, where it gives these violety like undertones, almost like a Crayola crayon, you know. It's a very pastel like image. Imagine like a thick wax, or you know, something that just tends to cover everything over, like a thick wax. And that thick waxy Crayola feeling is the florals. That's what the florals kind of feel like here. They're deep, they're rich. And so even though the earthy notes hint at the forest floor, even though the animalics hint at the skunk and all this other stuff, you know, walking on the forest floor, it's almost like the scent is being purposely disguised by the forest, right? The forest is using everything it has, the earthiness, the spruce, the green from the spruce and the oak moss, you know, the florals, especially the florals, the champaca and the rose, which feel very strangely like time of day appropriate, you know? Like the champaca takes the sunrise and the sunset, and the rose kind of takes everything in between, and they break up this job of trying to disguise the skunk walking through the forest floor. I think it's a big oversimplification, but if you took something like a Riesler Doré's Forbidden Flower and mixed it with something like Royal Barn from the Musks collection, you would be in the ballpark of something like Rahasani. And, you know, it's quite interesting for a Prin fragrance. You know, you have to obviously account for Prin's weirdness, the spicy touches and all this other stuff, right? And there's almost something that almost slightly hints at tobacco sometimes. That could be the oud peeking through a little bit more and then reverting. But it's just a fragrance that is so much like a Prin. You know, his spice combination in the opening, even when it's hidden by this orris butter floral combination, is just so unique, and it's like a fingerprint, you know, like you can tell this is a Prin fragrance. But it stays true to the backstory, which, speaking of the backstory, I don't think I actually read you the full blurb. So let me just read you the blurb real quick, and then we'll kind of wrap this up since this is just a late night insight. So, Rahasani, or imply messages or hidden code in Thai, blended with two main materials, which are the precious 50-year-old wild oud from the south of Thailand and skunk tincture surrounded by smoky, fruity, herbal flowers. As its name implies, the perfume is like playing hide and seek. After applying to your skin, the skunk tincture will come and go or hide underneath of wild oud. Skunk tincture is made by macerating fresh skunk glands. The animals are trapped for their fur. Processing their glands makes a useful product out of something that would otherwise be discarded. Limited edition of 2 batches were made. Around 200 bottles will be made. Due to the very high percentage of natural materials, each batch may be slightly different. And there's a ton of notes in here. Skunk tincture, the oud, camphor, galbanum, orris butter, violet leaf, jasmine absolute, champaca, tuberose, rose, angelica, cumin seed, costus, amiris, pine tar, nagamatha to amp that oud up, even though you don't get very much of it. Oak moss, castoreum, myrrh, nutmeg, lavandin absolute, aldehydes, blackcurrant bud, mate absolute, chamomile, spruce, and basil. 5 bottles are left on his website on prinlomros.com, and they're $320 for 30 mils. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. A Prin that stays true to Prin's DNA, his fingerprint-like DNA, and yet it goes in a little different direction with the florals and the orris butter and all that stuff. So very interesting. I like this one more than I like most Prins, and it's also not as wild and crazy as most of the Prins. For whatever reason, I think that, you know, peekaboo aspect tends to hide some of the craziness underneath this fog, if you will, or underneath this bed of flowers, however you want to view it. Underneath some of the camphoraceous resinous notes and stuff like that, underneath the weird oud that seems like it's missing and then it pops up and then it goes away. So yeah, that's my thoughts. So Lee, I guess this took 2 or 3 years to make this happen, but thank you for sending this my way, brother. It's a pleasure to get to do these reviews. If you guys have any experience with this one, do let me know. Let me know what you think of the new Sherwood. If you've smelled it already, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I will be discussing that on the channel very, very soon. So as always, appreciate everyone who does all the things I never ask you to, like watch, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. It's a pleasure doing these videos for you guys. Cheers, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.